Hello and welcome to Productronica. Here today we're going to be talking about Europe's electronics future. Now, Europe's had a rough couple of years. Following COVID, we saw the demise of the EV industry, coupled with rocketing costs of energy, supply chain disruptions from tariffs and the Russia-Ukraine war. Some manufacturers have offset this shortfall in automotive demand by replacing it with military and to a lesser extent some medical electronics. But companies are hurting. PCB companies are closing. There are insufficient OSATs and Europe is fast losing the chips race. SEMI and all 27 EU countries have signed a petition to revise the EU Chips Act. I'm guessing because you think it's not fit for purpose. So I think we should possibly start there. I mean, somebody have said that on our current trajectory, Europe will become a place where we simply design cool things and other people will scale them and build them. Is that what we really want? Or what should we do to revise this Chips Act and what should it look like? We'll start with you on the end, Stefano. Okay.
Thank you. I think it's a very timely question, now more than ever that the revision of the CHIPS Act is in full swing. The European Commission has pledged to revise the CHIPS Act in the upcoming months. They expect to have a proposal by the end of Q1 2026. So most likely towards March 2026, we should expect a revised CHIPS Act. Your question on research is absolutely right. We should not underestimate the fact that Europe is home to some very impressive research centers, world class. In the industry players from South Korea, Japan, Taiwan, when they want to innovate, they come to Europe. Yeah. And that's something that is an asset and that will remain a strategic asset in the coming years. On the other hand, we cannot overlook the fact that we have to make sure that some of this output of these research and development activities, these innovative breakthroughs that we are producing in Europe, should benefit the European industry as well. Otherwise, we're just going to strengthen competitors across the world. And in that regard, I think a key mission and a key request, in fact, that SEMI has outlined to the European Commission is to introduce greater funding, greater support for scaling up and for integrating industry much more in these pilot lines, in these research pilot lines that the CHIPS Act has established.
Well, I think, yeah, as part of this structure, though, I mean, if you're going to keep it all in Europe, you're going to have an end-to-end supply chain. And I mean, Sanjay, I mean, I know you're doing some work with some advocacy in Brussels as well.
Yeah.
Maybe you can talk to your end of it, the PCB end of it.
Happy to. We're big supporters of the CHIPS Act, but we believed in a CHIPS Act Plus concept, which is something that my colleague here spoke of earlier. If the focus is just on chips, I don't see how Europe wins if it's just on chips. Right. We too have been talking to the European Commission, and what we have told them, three basic things. One, you explicitly have to include PCB, PCBA in the CHIPS Act 2.
Right.
Two, you have to fund capability and capacity expansion for PCB, PCBA, EMS, and advanced electronics packaging. And three, if sovereignty or security is the big policy push here, we know that from an aerospace defense point of view, we know from critical infrastructure, Dieter mentioned some of it in his morning talk this morning, things like data servers, data centers, transport, electronics runs through all of these things. Yeah. So you can't have an industrial policy for these industries that doesn't include an electronics industrial policy. Right. So again, to repeat, PCB, PCBA must be part of CHIPS Act 2. Funding should be there, and we need to have a real industrial policy around electronics manufacturing.
Right. So when you say funding should be there, are you saying, are you talking about them subsidizing the build of new PCB factories? Or are you talking about actually funding subsidizing PCBs?
I'm talking about funding innovation, for capability building. I'm talking about opportunities for companies, give them incentives to grow, to build factories, so that we can produce more printed circuit boards in Europe.
See, part of the problem here is that, you know, if you talk to some of the EMS companies, they say even if you put 100% tariffs on PCBs, we still get them cheaper from China, which means, no, it's true. It's true.
I'm not disagreeing with you.
So therefore, the problem is not necessarily even so much building the PCB factory. It's actually subsidizing the PCB because the Chinese government are clearly subsidizing.
So let's talk about a couple of areas that we talked about in our call to action. And Dieter mentioned it this morning. The regulatory climate and the tax climate is horrible here for local producers.
Yes.
All right. Dieter mentioned it this morning. I even made a note of it. European PCB manufacturers are having to pay duties on base materials that are coming in.
Yes.
Why? That seems ludicrous, right?
Right.
That should be something that should be corrected right away.
Right.
You mentioned energy costs.
Yeah.
Energy costs are killing European manufacturing right now.
And
something needs to be done
well,
to.
they have ways of being able to do that
Right.
as well.
Right.
It's just that the will is not there at the moment to do it.
Right. So I think it's very important for us as an industry to understand, if you're looking at it from the European perspective, why is it that European PCB manufacturers have to pay duties on the importation of base materials, yet Asian PCB manufacturers can sell their product in Europe with no tariffs whatsoever?
Yes.
It just seems like it seems like we're protecting the wrong entity.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't know if you agree or disagree
to
with
add
me.
to this, Dieter, so I'll let you fill in some of the gaps.
Yeah, first of all, yes, the laminate situation is a problem, specifically as today we only have more or less two suppliers left in Europe. One is Azola, the other one is Panasonic, and Panasonic decided to shut down the factory end of this year. So there will be one factory only, and that factory will not be able to supply all the demand for laminate. So no matter whether the PCB manufacturers in Europe want to or don't want to, they have to buy laminate,
Right.
and they should not be treated unfair by the European Union with those import duties. That is the one thing. In addition, we have this situation, we only had one copper foil manufacturer left, which is Circuit Foil in Luxembourg.
Yes.
Circuit Foil in Luxembourg was this year in June sold to DuFu technology in China.
Right.
And nobody spoke up about that. And the problem is, I have spoken today at the exhibition with a couple of other experts who tell me, well, the laminate manufacturers and PCB manufacturers already got some strange information out of Luxembourg that certain high quality copper foils cannot be supplied out of Luxembourg anymore.
Really?
Well, and they did supply that copper foil in the past. But we have to realize two things. There is not only a demand for copper foil for printed circuit boards, but as well for batteries for EV vehicles. And we know as well that there is a huge demand in China. So my question is there going to be a lot of copper foil exports from Luxembourg to China in the future? Are we again treated very unfair over here? And I don't understand why people have spoken up to the governments against this sale, but nobody is doing something.
Yeah,
As if it's not a big problem.
Well, I don't think they're looking at it from a security point of view either. I mean, you know, we talk about chips. We needing to have our own control over chips in the United States and in Europe for security reasons. But it's the same with PCBs. PCBs are a risk as well. You know, I think at least from a security point of view, any high, you know, if they would start to move towards demanding that all high reliability electronics are made here, that would be a good start. We don't care about the toys and the other consumer-led stuff.
Yeah, and we see a big development in the Far East in regards to in regards to printed circuit boards for AI servers. That is something which has new technology implemented. And I remember one of your interviews, I think it was with Keith Bryant who said it as well, that modules are becoming much bigger.
Yes.
125 by 125 millimeters, or even 150 by 150 millimeters as BGAs. So the substrate will have a couple of thousand balls, and that means flatness of the PCB will have to be much flatter than ordinary PCBs, and that requires different materials than standard FR4. And TPCA, the Taiwanese Printed Circuit Board Association, already warned that there is a surge and that PCBs for AI there is a 50-fold demand for such PCBs, and it will require high technology laminate. And my question is, which I'm raising, is will there then be sufficient laminate exported from Far East to Europe for the European PCB manufacturer to manufacture such high quality boards as well?
No,
or
as long as you
will
don't
they
upset
end
the
up
Chinese,
manufacturing over here 4-layer boards or double-sided tools? And that is true, yes. We see price difference of more than 100% on some of the printed circuit boards. But that should not be our argument, because we cannot win this argument.
No.
We need to focus on security, our own security for the products. And yes, you read some of the funny stories that Chinese buses sold to Norway can be switched off from China. I love these stories. I cannot judge it, but it's a nice story anyhow.
Only if you're not on the bus.
Right. All right, Stefano wants to get some words in here, so let him
I just want to kind of link back and echo some of the points you made, because at this point in time we are essentially witnessing a geopolitical fracturing between different regions of the world. Right. The unprecedented era of globalization and open trade that we had before is the exception of history, not the rule.
Correct.
So this is the new reality that we're going to have to deal with. And I genuinely think that the semiconductor industry, speaking on behalf of SEMI, is perhaps one of the greatest industries in terms of adaptability, flexibility, and agility. What's wrong with the current framework in Europe, the CHIPS Act? We think it's a good first step. We're happy to see that it's bringing momentum back to Europe. We are seeing investments that we hadn't seen in a while, and we're seeing a potential reversal of the decline that we had witnessed since the early 2000s, where Europe was still actually in a leading position at the global level. And it's heartbreaking how quickly you can lose a leadership position in this industry. The next step is to make sure that we can expand the CHIPS Act to include the entire supply chain. The first-of-a-kind concept is a good legislative concept to facilitate support towards the industry, towards certain segments, but the only investments that we have seen in Europe so far have been towards front-end manufacturing, which is important. And in a crisis scenario in the Taiwan Strait, you want to have some front-end capacity in Europe, great, but then there is an entire supply chain, an end-user supply chain that you need to take into consideration. And we need to evolve from a first-of-a-kind that is based on innovative, unprecedented technologies, breakthrough technologies, to security constraints. We need to be able to produce what we don't have and what we will need. That's the core of the security of our supply chains, of supply chain resilience. Do we have enough capacity in Europe to sustain our operations in a situation of crisis? And today we don't. We don't.
We don't. I think we've got weak leadership, quite frankly. I mean, if you look at all the different continents that are pursuing this, I think India seems to be doing the best job of putting together an end-to-end supply chain, quite frankly.
It's their goal.
Sorry?
It's their goal, aspirational.
Yeah, absolutely.
We'll see if
but
they
it
get
should
there.
it should be the goal here as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Just to to build on the point.
Yeah, but I mean,
that was made.
here's my next question.
Yeah,
I mean, which is basically, if the majority of manufacturing was centered in Europe, used to be centered around automotive, which it was, why is the EU allowing Chinese cars in? I mean, that's crazy. I mean, that market is commoditizing as well at the same time. They're now making, cars in China for $12,000, $10,000. And Tesla's starting to bring out cheap cars in the U.S. So the value is going out of that business. But the problem is, Europe needs time to turn around, to change its business models from that, from the automotive, but it's not giving itself the time to change because it's allowing the Chinese to come in.
But we're running out of time.
Yes.
And I think that's the key. One of the key points. The urgency needs to be there. Dieter's made this point numerous times. We have made this point numerous times as well, based on guidance from Dieter. We call the approach silicon to systems, end to end.
Yeah.
A holistic approach.
Yeah.
But some of the data points are scary. European share of PCB for the first time has fallen below 2%. And if we're not careful, it'll approach 1% very quickly.
Yeah.
Packaging has fallen under 2%. Also
number of
on a downward
OSATs,
trend. Right?
Yeah.
And IC substrates. Europe produces very few IC substrates.
That's right.
If these are three important components to
Yeah,
making a full system.
That's right. Well, Host Karamtech used to be a big one over here for many years. But
So I think collectively what we're all trying to do, whether it's an association, whether it's consulting, is make sure that the EU is aware that they do need to be thinking about this from a holistic standpoint.
Yeah.
I'll say it. I said it before. I'll say it again. We're very thrilled with the CHIPS Act because I think it presents an opening for technology to figure out how to work with government to make certain things happen. So I applaud the CHIPS Act. But if we're going to be building semiconductors in Europe and nothing else, then how does that help regional security? Because at the end of the day, you have a semiconductor, you're building Europe, great, but then you're still sending it back to the Far East. So how have we address security with that? It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Yeah. It's got to be a holistic approach. And we have to think about funding the entire ecosystem in order to make this happen.
Yeah.
Very minor addition. We're looking at countries, governments in East Asia that are very, very good at conducting economic industrial statecraft, are integrating security considerations into their industrial policies. Mm-hmm. That's who we are competing against, or in some cases collaborating with. And we're still talking about Europe and the EU, we're still very much behind in this.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, China essentially weaponized raw materials. That's what they did, and they're holding the rest of us to ransom. But, there's a danger here if this continues, this U.S.-China spat, that they're going to start driving standards in China to develop their own path. And it looks like they're starting to go their own path in China. Is Europe going to be stuck somewhere in the middle? I mean,
there is a European standardization strategy which has been unveiled, I believe, 3 or 4 years ago. It's still very much in its infancy, so it hasn't created a true European standardization ecosystem. I still think the only way possible is to have standardization processes among like-minded countries. So for example, for semiconductors, we have a G7 point of contact group that brings together the G7 countries. Okay. I think that's actually a great format for countries that have common interests, like-minded political systems to conduct standardization in tandem, because people forget that China's One Belt, One Road initiative is, yes, primarily an infrastructural project, geopolitical project. There is a very important element of standardization in there, because that's how they plan on locking in countries to their products, to their key technologies, to make them abide to the new Chinese-led standardization rather than the traditional one in which Europe and the US have always participated.
Right. I would say from I have a little bit of the opposite experience. I would say from a standardization point of view, that is our DNA as Global Electronics Association, formerly IPC.
I know it is, and you're still seeing a lot of cooperation coming.
We do. Just the point I was about to make is we do have several standards initiatives where you have China, India, Europe, and North America sitting at the same table, trying to work things out. So I think there's some subjectivity to that notion, but I believe that for some of the core standards, we are still seeing global cooperation on those standards.
Right. Okay. All right, guys, we're starting to run out of time here, so I'm going to skip to my last question, and it's a very simple one, and that is, are EU manufacturers over-regulated?
Yeah, that's a very complex question. There is no, in my view, there is no yes or no answer. I think that certainly, yes, European companies or companies that are active in Europe do face a whole set of regulations that can put them at a disadvantage compared to other regions. I still think that some of those regulations, and we don't have time to get into the details, I think that some of those regulations are fair as a citizen before being a representative of SEMI-Europe. However, there is certainly an element of speed which we need to tackle, an element of bureaucracy. It's complicated. The EU is still made up of 27 different member states. It's not a single entity. And these member states sometimes have to come to agreements, and you have to consult the European Commission, you have to consult national governments. What we have seen with the CHIPS Act, I keep referring back to it, but because we've been deeply involved, we see that, for example, to obtain the approval of a project and therefore funding support for a particular project, they were receiving the same questions from different departments within the European Commission. The one, DG Competition, that's dealing with the state aid competitive legal aspects, and then DG Connect, which is dealing with the industrial policy of the EU. So these kind of overlaps, these are easy fixes that we can work towards, because at the end of the day, we are talking about global companies, and we must not forget that it's not only companies competing against each other for particular projects and segments. We know that there is divisions within global companies that are competing against other regional divisions to obtain a particular project in Europe. And it's a duty of the European institutions to work in tandem with them, because we need these investments. We need them, simple and plain.
Okay.
I would just say, just to add on to what he said, I think there's good aspects and bad aspects to regulations, but the reality is that members that we're serving are burdened today. And so whatever we can do as an industry to lessen the burden improves productivity, morale, reliability of products.
Well, it's certainly one of the barriers for bringing back a PCB industry anyway. But I mean, what is your view on it?
My biggest headache or stomach ache is timing. We are simply too slow. We have been talking with Brussels now for the last 2 years, and in between we had new election, which meant as well that all of a sudden we had new people to speak to. So the administrative part is simply too long, too complicated, and whereas we seem to need 4 or 5 years to make a decision, our competition outside Europe is much faster.
Much faster.
And not only in the Far East, in the United States as well. People in the United States, they can really
they can make it happen quickly, but China's
we
probably
in
faster
Europe,
than that.
We simply seem to have lost all timing issues of that.
And the predictability, which is related to timing. So you need to have, projects can also not get approved in certain cases. I mean, that's just a fact. But the problem in Europe is that not only the process can be slow, but it can get extended multiple times. And so when you're conducting or looking to conduct an investment that is worth multiple billions of dollars, euros, or hundreds of millions, you need to have a certain level of predictability. You need to know at a certain point there needs to be a deadline beyond which you know whether the project is approved and you go forward, or you don't. And that's the key difference in terms of speed that we have with regards to competitors in East Asia. Okay. That's a key point.
Right. Okay, well, gentlemen, unfortunately we've run right out of time, but I want to end on that point, and I want to thank you all very much for coming in. Thank you, Stefano from Sanjay from Global Electronics Association, as you call it now, and of course my old friend Dieter Weiss here from Informa.
Thank you, Trevor.
So thank you, gentlemen,
thank you,
and thank you to our audience for watching.
Ko-Young is leading a smart revolution that will change the world of electronics manufacturing. Based on our pioneering True 3D measurement-based inspection technology, we revolutionize the solder paste inspection market to such great lengths that 1 in 2 SPIs sold today is from Ko-Young. Building our SPI technology, we expanded to automated optical inspection, also known as AOI. Every year, we introduce new award-winning innovations and have proudly earned the respect from thousands of customers across diverse industries. Aside from our R&D center in Korea, we have research facilities focused on artificial intelligence and deep learning across the world to help us further develop proprietary AI technologies for your challenges. With our global network of sales and service centers, we aim to respond quickly to your needs and to deliver the highest level of customer satisfaction.